Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Greg Summers. If you like this kind of content, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you know if I put out new content or when I put out new content, and leave me a comment. So a couple days ago I got the FM3 and I wanted to cover two things today. First was creating a preset from scratch. It's going to be an ambient preset. That one takes up the most CPU because it's got reverbs and delays and drives. So I've got an empty preset here. I want to show you one thing real quick. A lot of people have asked, what happens? How do you import or how do you migrate XFX3 presets over? It's pretty easy. You just import the preset, grab one. Now what's going to happen, you're going to see we got fewer blocks in the screen than the XFX3 or AxEdit. So once I do this, it's going to basically break the preset. And so now you see the output is gone. So what you're going to have to do is at this point figure out what you don't need, because first of all, you're already over CPU. I mean, the XFX3 is so powerful, you just can't expect it. Well, we could expect it, but it's not happening. So, reverbs take up a lot, drives take up a little bit of CPU as well. So you'd have to move this guy over, and then you'd have to sacrifice some of these to make everything fit on the screen. They do import okay. They do preserve a lot of settings. I have noticed that the delays come in with no mix. So you're going to notice a few things. And I think over time they're going to put out new firmware. They're going to update the process. I think it's going to be a little bit more seamless. But you're still going to have to sacrifice some of those blocks for sure if you have a large preset. All right, so let's go back to a blank grid here. I'm going to go ahead and put an input and output block. I'm going to connect these guys together. I'm going to just pick somewhere for now. Add an amp. Add a cab. So now we have basic sound. It's added our Vox amp here, which is what I've been adding recently, but it still adds the factory cab. What you can do is you can say this is a template if you want. I'm going to put one more thing over here. So right now we're at 22%. So I want you to look at the CPU as we add things. I'm going to add a volume because for this type of preset, which is going to be those ambient ones, I'm going to always have a volume for swells. We want to tie this over to pedal 1. All right, next I want to add a compressor. So we're hovering at about 25% now. I'm going to add a compressor here. It's going to be our studio compressor. Let's go ahead and hit the tube compressor. And what I'm going to do, now we're at what, 27? So a couple percent there. I'm going to do a little trick that I learned from Andy Wood, which is cool, is to kind of use your compressor not to compress, but more to push the front end. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So right now we have this. I'm going to go ahead and change this to a matchless because that's what I've been working with. This is based off a DC30. They don't have the EF86 model yet, which I'm looking forward to that. That's my favorite. But I am going to change the preamp to EF86. It's not the same. EF86, that channel only has a couple different settings, and I think it's high cut and tone. Still hovering at 27. Next, I want to add a drive. Drives add about 10% or so, depending on what drive you add. So we're just going to add a drive block. It defaults to what I've been using, the Tone of Kings, which is the King of Tone pedal. And we're going to utilize channels instead of another drive. Now what you can do is if you really need to save space, you can remove this, take it back down to our 27%. You can come in here to the preamp under the amp block, and you can go over to this input boost, and you can turn this on. The issue that I have here is it doesn't have the King of Tone, but what you could do is the neutral boost is pretty good. Obviously, if you like, the TS808 or the mod, the TS9, you can kind of do it there. But let's just show you kind of the concept here. It's going to boost 12 dB. There's not a lot of settings on it, but it gives you something, right? So if you turn it off, so that's one way to save CPU. We're going to turn it off though. I'm going to add a drive because I want that. I need that drive. One thing I did forget to do is we're going to come in here and change a couple settings here on the cab and the amp. we need to level the preset. So what I do here, you can do it on the front panel as well, but I'll go to output, and you can come back over to the amp, adjust the level a little bit. What you need to think about though is if you're leveling stuff, is to leave yourself some headroom there. So if you have boosts, you know, I'm not going to have boost right now, so I'm going to keep it right at that 0 dB. Come over here, let's add a delay. I'm going to add a digital delay, digital stereo. We'll leave everything default, except I'm going to make this a quarter for now. You could adjust the left-right time ratio to get that kind of ping-pong kind of effect if you want. Now look, we are at 38. We went from 27 to 37. Delays, they don't add that much. You're just limited to 2 delays on here rather than the 4 in the XFX3, but we can utilize channels, and I'll do that in a second. Last thing we're going to do for this one is we're going to add a reverb. Now, you'll see the CPU jump quite a bit, and I think this is why people, a lot of times, they will buy an external pedal. If you have an HX Stomp or you know, some other lower powered, you know, floorboard, sometimes it makes sense to just focus on those external reverb pedal, and then you can save all that CPU and add more drives and stuff later. So watch that. We're going to go 36%, 38%. We're going to add this reverb. You're going to see just how much it eats up. We jumped up to 60%. Depending on the algorithm or the setting that you use, we're going to go ahead and put, this is kind of that timeline, not timeline, but big sky kind of things, stratocumulus. I'm going to move over this drive and add a pitch. I'm playing the same thing, yes, over and over. Well, it kind of gives you something to go by here. So all right, so we're up to 70%, getting close to that end of our CPU. If you add another drive, most certainly it will put you at the top end of this. So I can show you that. And you look, I mean, it's a decent preset. You just can't go as crazy as the XFX, but let's add the second drive block and see where we're at. So we are basically at the top here. I'm going to turn this drive off. So 77%. So obviously you can add your own blocks and see what they do. So let's take that, let's shunt that drive. Now I'm going to build my scenes real quick. So at the end of the day, we have our CPU is running around 70. That's pretty good. It gives us a little bit of leeway to add something else if we wanted to. Again, if you add another drive, that's going to kick you right at the very top of that CPU. But there's other options, so you just got to get one in your hands and play with it on your own. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, leave me a comment. Thanks. We'll see you later.